Hello, my name is Jamal Thompson, also known as JT, and alongside me is
Ezra Pinzer,
also known as Easy E, and you are tuned into the
Qrack the Code podcast.
So E, we had a great last episode. It seems like forever ago that we recorded, but tell everybody about our last podcast.
Yeah, so obviously we had a chance to record a very important podcast. It's sort of a pivotal time in regards to the senator letter that I'm sure you have all heard about at this point. Super great opportunity to get to connect with Thomas Savage, who's the NAACP rep for our region, and we had him on the podcast and gained just an incredible perspective on what he's been through and some incredible advice for what we can do moving forward with him and with others around our community.
And he also touched a little bit about the impact that he has had in the community as well as abroad. And he didn't mention this, but we are happy to officially announce that he is a part of our official Code Advisory Board, along with Dr. Julie Baker and the College of Education. Dr. Levita Birdwell in athletics is also a part of our official advisory board, along with Chief Evans with Cookeville PD and Coach Marcus King with men's basketball. So the introduction of our advisory board is official to continue to substantiate the work that we're doing. So it's pretty big, and the things that Code is doing is really moving in a positive direction, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And those people that you just mentioned on our advisory board, well, you all may not see them, are making incredible strides for change, supporting us and supporting others throughout the community. For example, as I mentioned, Tom Savage joined us on the podcast last week and heard about what we wanted to communicate as far as the letter from the senators requesting the president of our university to ask us not to protest during the anthem or while in uniform. And he heard our concerns, and he presented us with a great opportunity to join the NAACP in a meeting that actually had Senator Bailey, who is our local representative in the Tennessee State Senate, on it. And so JT and I were able to speak with Senator Bailey. Now, obviously, this is not the meeting that we idealize, and we are still working for to have him on campus to speak with our student athletes, but it was a good opportunity just to interact with him and get a feel for maybe his perspective in a way, but certainly get a feel for who he is and what he is working with on Capitol Hill.
Absolutely. Also, we would like to give a special shout out to the athletic director, Mark Wilson, as well as our president, Phil Oldham, for constantly supporting the movement of student athletes and what we're doing within this community at Tennessee Tech University. So it's pretty big, the work that Code is doing, and to have the support of our president and our athletic director, it's pretty huge in what we are accomplishing. So big shout out to you both. We have a special episode in store today, Ezra. We have the Provost, Miss Lori Bruce, going to join us, and we also have a special interviewer, Miss Jordan Tony of the track team, joining us as well. So I'm excited about it. I know you're excited about it. Hopefully you all are also excited about it. So stay tuned. We will be right back on Qrack the Code podcast.
My name is Dane Quest. I'm a sophomore. I'm majoring in biology with a health science concentration. I'm also a member of the men's basketball team. As you can see, I am wearing one of Code's newest T-shirts. It's now available. Please reach out to JT or Ezra for a T-shirt. And you are tuning in to Qrack the Code. Oh, yes, sir. 2, 1.
Welcome back to Qrack the Code. We have an extremely special guest for you all today. She is the provost here at Tennessee Tech. She is the vice president of academic affairs, as well as finding time to be a professor of electrical and computer engineering. Everyone, please welcome Lori Mann Bruce.
Thank you.
Of course, Dr. Bruce, thank you so much for joining us here today. And so I have to admit that when we were able to make the connection to have you on, the first thing I had to do was Google what a provost is. And so just to help out our listeners who may be as uneducated as myself, kind of dive into what exactly your role and position is here on campus.
So a lot of people ask that question, and including faculty and students and staff. Lots of people ask what a provost is. And a provost is the chief academic officer On some campuses, it's referred to as the chief, kind of the chief faculty member. So I am a faculty member. I am a professor, but I oversee all of the academic programs, all of the colleges, the departments at the undergrad and the graduate level. So anything that's instructional on campus. So not housing, not dining, not the bookstore, not parking, but anything that's instructional, anything that has to do with the faculty, the classroom, getting a degree on through your studies. That's the provost is responsible for guiding and serving all of that.
Interesting. So with all of these responsibilities, what is something you wish you knew when you were younger as a female?
Oh, yeah. So, if I could go back to my younger self, I think probably if I could go back and give myself advice, let's look at it that way, and give myself one piece of advice, I would say, and this is for me personally, to have more grace and more compassion for others and myself. I tend to be a person who's a problem solver, and when you're a problem solver, you can get critical because you're assessing a situation, you're trying to improve things. So that's kind of in my nature and my personality. And when I was younger, I was that way about, I would just say about myself as much as anything else, and I still am. But if I were to go back and give myself one piece of advice, I would say just be more compassionate and have more grace for yourself and give more grace to others.
I have a question kind of about, you're talking about maybe that over hypercritical mentality at times, but I think that something that is important in leadership, and correct me if I'm wrong because you know more than I do, is a willingness to have confrontation. Do you think that was in a way helpful for you and kind of that willingness to confront people? And how did you balance that as you interacted with people kind of coming through the ranks of leadership?
Yeah. So I'll back up a little bit. I grew up on a farm. I grew up the youngest of a group of kids and cousins that lived with us at times in our household. And so I think my upbringing, it makes you very practical and very pragmatic. And, when something needs to be done, somebody's just got to step up and do it on a farm, right? That's just the way it is. And so I think my upbringing and how I grew up kind of instilled in me a thought of, well, if something needs to be done, somebody has to do it, so you might as well just jump in there and try. And not having a fear of failure, right? Of being able to, okay, if I try it and it doesn't work out, okay, at least I did something. And so I think that also that not having a fear of confrontation of, well, if I think we should do it this way, and my cousin, because it was a large household with lots of kids, and they think it should be done that way, we had confrontation over what do we need to do, and we just kind of worked it out, and we worked our way through it and got to the other end. And I do think a lot of my childhood and upbringing created that mentality that it's not personal. We're trying to achieve a goal. We're all trying to figure out how to get there. Now, fast forward a little bit, when I went to college, I studied engineering. So I'm an electrical and computer engineer, and for 10 years, through my bachelor's, my master's, my PhD, did nothing but study engineering. Now, worked in between some, worked for the Army, worked for different things, but engineering kind of reinforces in you this idea that it's not personal, it's physics. It's math. It's, you're trying to design something. You're trying to take something and make it better. It's not about our egos or about us. It's about the thing. It's about the system. And so I think that also instills in you this idea that when you're being critical of something, you're not being critical of the person. You're being critical. You're critiquing the situation and trying to improve it.
That
So
makes sense.
I think
like
my
that.
upbringing and my education kind of reinforced what could have been probably already there in my personality.
So throughout your journey, personal and educational, who are some women that you looked up to and why?
So definitely my grandmothers. one grandmother, my maternal grandmother in particular, she always, oh, I wouldn't say always, she lived with us for much of my childhood. We shared a bedroom. We shared a full bed, not even a queen, a full bed. And so when I say it was, it was a lively household, and with, like I said, cousins that lived with us at times, and I have 2 siblings. But I was very close to my maternal grandmother. Her name's Evelyn, and she's deceased now. But she is one of the most compassionate, giving, generous to a fault ladies. She was always very poor. When she passed away, all of her belongings fit into one box, one kind of little crate. But she was the kind of person that if you gave her a Christmas present, before you left the house, she'd given it back to you. It's like she loved giving and serving. So very inspirational for her. And then my mother, her name's Judy. She is one of the hardest working, smartest, spunkiest people I've ever known. She's maybe 5 foot. She's pretty short, but she's small, but she's mighty. And so she's kind of where my grandmother I felt was very soft and compassionate and generous. My mom is like spunky and spirited and very hardworking, and always wanted to go to college. Never really got to when she was younger. And so when I was a teenager, she quit her job in a factory and went to college. And so she was the very first person in our family to go to college. And so she's very inspirational.
So from your journey and just talking to you for a little bit, you definitely have an inspirational story yourself. So what is some advice that you could give to young females like myself that are just starting their journey?
I would say don't let other people define who you are. Being a female, I grew up in Tennessee, so I think growing up, going to college in the Deep South, people expected me to be a certain kind of person and to have certain characteristics, and that's okay, but I would say don't let other people define who you are, and then to also know everybody to some degree suffers what's called the imposter syndrome. And I don't know if y'all know what the imposter syndrome is.
Educate us.
Okay, so the imposter syndrome is when you think you're an imposter and everybody's about to figure it out. So, for example, being a female in electrical engineering, very male-dominated discipline. There were times when I was in graduate school, I was in classes of over 100 students in this class, and I was the only female.
Oh, wow.
And so the imposter syndrome is when you're sitting there saying, I'm really an imposter. I don't really belong here. I'm faking it. I don't really, and everybody's about to figure out that I don't really know what's going on in this class. They're all about to figure out that I'm posing. I'm a poser, right? And that I'm an imposter. But everybody has that to a degree. But if you let that in you start to take over, you start to think that you don't really belong. And so, but to me, knowing everybody's kind of thinking that at different levels helps, because when you feel that way, you're like, everybody feels that way.
Right.
Yeah. So I think when you're in the extreme minority in situations, it's very easy to have that imposter syndrome voice start in, like, you don't really belong here. They're about to find out how little you really know, or you don't, they're about to find out that you're feeling nervous. And so when you're in the extreme minority, I think that imposter syndrome voice can really take hold. But knowing everybody has it to a degree, I find really helps.
Definitely agree.
Absolutely. One thing that you touched on that I absolutely love is the idea of not letting others define you. And as fate would have it, that is one of the biggest themes of our organization code and of our podcast, Qrack the Code. You've
I
heard
did
us
not
say
know
it 100
that.
times.
I actually did not know that was one of your main themes.
Imagine that. We love to say redefining the defined. It says it on the back of the shirt, so oh well. And what we see that as is people not putting us as student athletes in a box and defining us as athletes. But obviously, you already were jumping in to not letting people define you as a woman, which is exactly what I was about to ask you about, because I wanted to talk about what I see as one of the coolest things about you that I know of. I'm sure there's a lot more that are even better that I'm not even aware of.
Yeah, I'm really cool.
Well, I believe you. Especially because you don't have anything to do with parking. I mean, your popularity's through the roof right now. You are the first female provost at Tennessee Tech University, and that says a lot. But when I hear you talk about being in classes with over 100 people and being the only female, it makes a lot of sense. And so we always talk about redefining the defined. The defined role of the provost at Tennessee Tech was a male. How do you think you've been able to come in and redefine that role and put your own fingerprint on it as the first female provost at our school?
That's a great question. I do think I think anytime you're in a leadership role as a female, you live in a catch-22 situation. You live in what's called a double blind, where people expect a leader to be competent and forceful, but people expect, and those are typically male characteristics that are projected onto men and that men project, being competent and authoritative and forceful and take charge. And that's what people say they want in a leader. That's what they say they want in a leader. Lots of research that says that. Then what people expect from a female is to be warm and kind and nurturing. And so when you're a female leader, you're always having to be very intentional in balancing those two. You have to be very intentional in balancing what might come naturally to you with what people are expecting from you, and what people want from you in one part of your life, and what they expect from you in another part of your life. So I'll give you some examples of that. So when you're a leader and female, you need to keep a distance, but be approachable. See how there's two sides of the same thing. So I need to kind of be above the fray. If there's people that's in conflict as the leader, I need to be up here. I need to be above the fray, but I still need to be approachable. Another example would be I need to be competent and authoritative, but I need to show vulnerability. So you when you're competent and authoritative, you don't think, well, that doesn't go with being vulnerable. But yet I think that when you are real and authentic and you tell people what your failures are, where your weaknesses are, and you're really vulnerable, then people know, okay, that's a person I can follow somewhere, I can believe in, they can lead me somewhere. So there's this paradox of being kind of these traditionally male characteristics of authoritative, forceful, but then also being warm, kind, empathetic, nurturing. And so I hope that as a female provost, I'm striking a good balance between those two. And it's not going on too far on either end of the spectrum, but being very balanced, because I think and when you're in balance, that's when you're in a very healthy state.
Do you think that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like you're almost saying that it takes a level of confidence and competence to be willing to be vulnerable and to be willing to be approachable. Is that something that you think is even more prominent it almost takes more confidence as a female in authority to let your guard down, to show a little bit of vulnerability.
I definitely think so. And so, you might not be, some people might say, well, they're being very vulnerable. They're sharing a personal aspect, or they're sharing something where they've maybe failed. They've attempted and they failed. And I don't like to say failure. I always say in my office, we make mistakes, but we don't fail. Everybody makes mistakes. Everybody has setbacks. But the difference between a mistake and failure is picking yourself back up, dusting off, and keeping going, right? So when you admit that you've messed up, you've made a mistake, you've had a setback, you've had a disappointment, that admitting that is vulnerable. But I do agree with you. You have to have a very healthy ego to be able to do that.
Thank you so much for taking your time out and listening. I definitely appreciate those advice coming from a female. I can definitely relate.
Yeah. Where what society projects onto you and interprets what you do,
Mm-hmm.
because they're expecting certain things from you. So they project onto you certain expectations and then interpret your behavior in a certain way because they've already, in their mind, they have a bias. They have a preconceived notion of what you are about and what you're going to do. And so then that bias affects how they perceive your behavior and your actions.
Right. Thank you for your time. We really appreciate
Oh,
it.
you are very welcome. Very, very welcome.
All right. Thank you so much for those words on what it means to be a woman in general, what it means to be a woman in power, and for just being so open about yourself and your journey. Been an honor to speak with you, and we're not quite done yet, and so we will be right back on Qrack the Code.
Hello, everyone. My name is Michael Loleo. I'm a graduating senior here at Tennessee Tech. I'm a part of the men's basketball team, and you are now tuned in to Qrack the Code. Make sure you subscribe.
Welcome back to Qrack the Code podcast. We just got done with a tremendous interview with Dr. Lori Mann Bruce. And honestly, couldn't have thought of a better way to wrap up the month of March and our emphasis on women empowerment and redefining the defined for what a woman and even a student athlete woman should look like. Just a special chance to talk to somebody who has true experience in coming up through ranks that she was not expected to be in, that she was probably not accepted in always, and blazing a trail to a point where she is the highest academic officer here at school and thriving in that role as a female as we speak. So great opportunity to talk with her.
And it was truly an honor to have her grace our platform. So big thank you to her for joining us today. We have a lot of exciting things coming out in code, man. We are excited and encouraged to continue our fight for equality, to continue to change the narrative and redefine the define of the student athlete. And we are excited to future collaborate with other people on campus who are excited to do the same work and work in the same way and progress in the same way that we are. One of those people is the Vice President of Student Affairs, as well as the Multicultural Affairs Center, just who have constantly been in support of the work that we have done. So we are excited to future and further our collaborations with them and other branches and other organizations on campus who are continuing to fight for the same things that we are. So it's an exciting time around the Center of Diversity Education. I'm very excited about it.
Absolutely. And touching more on the future, just want to go ahead and introduce our next podcast. We'll be wrapping up the first year of Code on Tennessee Tech.
Season 1.
Yeah, hopefully a great season of Qrack the Code podcast. And we will just have on various members of Code kind of to recap what Code has been about this year and what we've been able to accomplish on our campus over the course of the past sports seasons, academic year, however you want to look at it.
And you will see some new faces, some old faces, so make sure you guys tune into that. It has been a great season 1, and I'm excited for season 2. If you guys are not already, make sure you guys subscribe to the YouTube channel right here so you can follow the Qrack the Code podcast. Make sure you follow us on Twitter and on Instagram. That'll be in the description box. A link to our last episode will also be in the description box.
Absolutely.
Also, I don't know if you've told the audience. I haven't told the audience, but we got some new shirts. merch. So stay up to date on where you can get the shirts if you guys want to continue to support the family. So we got some exciting things. Yeah, I don't know about you, but I'm excited. I can't even contain it. So this has been a great episode, man. And as always, my name is Jamal Thompson, also known as JT, and alongside me is
Ezra Pinzer.
also known as Easy E. And this has been another episode of
Qrack the Code podcast.